The Roll family farm at Narromine in central New South Wales. The last 6 years have been brutal, with droughts, floods and mice. They were banking on their first ever cotton crop to come home. But last month, bad news. Herbicide drift meant 380 hectares of cotton, potentially worth $400,000, would yield nothing. Do they know who did it? Well, if they do, they're not telling me. And if they could take legal action, would they? No, that's money they don't have. And if a prosecution was successful and a fine issued, it still wouldn't compensate the family for their losses. The cotton's being ploughed in to save precious soil moisture. Wiley Rolls okayed Landline filming but declined an interview. He was happy, though, for us to film a visit from the New South Wales Environmental Protection Authority's Carmen Dwyer.
Like, it looks like it's still a green, healthy plant and it's got boils developing on it, but so it would keep going, but it
carry the fruit for...
So it just won't grow the cotton.
Yeah.
We can't afford to kick own goals, and this is because of bad practice that this happens, and someone loses their livelihood. Up until December, hadn't received many complaints about spray drift damage, but they're coming in thick and fast now.
Over summer, spray drift affected cotton growers in Queensland and New South Wales.
To finish it off?
Some of them have now been hit 4 or 5 times this year. On the estimates of area, which are well and truly in the hundreds of thousands of hectares this year, it's got to be in the high tens of millions of dollars, the impact.
Everything that's been done, all the money that's been spent, all the training that's been done, the 98% of people have listened and can do it well. Everyone knows how to do it properly, but there's another 2% that are just wrecking it for everyone else.
It's hard to pinpoint offenders. Damage is visible days later, and if caused by an air inversion, offenders could be 50 kilometres or more away.
What we have to do is call out these rogue operators that are maliciously and intentionally, for their own benefit, impacting everyone else. So if you know someone, if you've got information, you've got evidence, ring 131 555 and let us help you to weed out these rogue operators. Because we've got the power to limit their licence, prevent them from spraying.
The EPA can enter farms to check equipment, compel production of purchase records, spray diaries and GPS data, and insurance companies must disclose to it if a farmer has been sued before. But New South Wales State Green politician Sue Higginson claims the EPA is a weak regulator.
The regulatory response is quite soft. It tends to be an information sheet, a discussion. Sometimes we might see a fine, but those fines are fairly low. And really, you can only conclude that at the moment we're failing those that are impacted, we're failing the broader community, and we're failing the farming community, and of course, we're failing the landscape. Sometimes we do need to take cases, make examples, and that acts as general deterrence across the landscape. We need a fresh approach, and we talk about the carrot and the stick. Well, we have not seen much stick.
So is the EPA a toothless tiger?
The EPA has powers to do strong regulation. We are absolutely going to use every regulatory tool in our power to go to those operators who are maliciously, negligently or just lazy in their application of pesticides, because you just can't treat neighbouring farms and the environment and our community like this. For those rogue operators, dob them in, name and shame them, tell us who they are, we're coming for them.
So this is your baby.
This is the little demo spray rig that I take around the country to show guys how some of the different nozzles operate.
Mary O'Brien used to work for another state regulator, Biosecurity Queensland.
The burden of proof is very high. It is very difficult to get that level of evidence. Is it impossible? No. And for inversion drift, I would suggest it is. Proving where it's come from is near impossible with inversion drift. Direct drift, a whole different story.
You'll see that they're much bigger droplets coming out and they're going straight down.
She quit to train farmers how to spray safely.
I do what I do to protect long-term access to products. for Australian farmers in 10 years' time to be still using the products that they're allowed to use today. That's essentially why I left the regulator role and went to training and providing that information. I was seeing the same problems cropping up. And I thought that my time and energy would be better spent showing them how not to muck it up rather than rouse on them when they'd mucked it up.
The main problem this summer was inversion drift. Mary uses smoke to explain it.
So the smoke is a really good way to show how the air is moving.
Night is a danger time. A horizontal layer of cold air can be trapped by a higher layer of warm air.
For example, if it was put in there at midnight and that inversion doesn't break till 7 a.m. and that average wind speed, let's say it was 10 k's an hour, that's 70 k's.
2,4-D, the main chemical implicated in the summer damage, is an effective and cheap weed killer. And lower drift risk alternatives are twice the price. Mary's worried if poor operators don't change, this key tool could be restricted or even banned.
The regulators don't have any other way to deal with this except tighten it up. It's up to the users to prove that they can be trusted with it.
Really bluntly, the only way forward now is to actually ban the chemical for a length of time until we actually can sit down and get it right.
That's a huge call for a farmer to make, but 10% of Stuart Armitage's cotton was affected.
You just feel frustrated because it's just happened again and again and again, and there's nothing you can do.
So he sprays safely. There's a weather station on farm and atop his sprayer. He can monitor everything while spraying.
And that's not groundbreaking technology, that's available to anyone. I've had it on boom sprays for 7 or 8 years. We've got all the tools at our disposal.
All 18 of agronomist Matthew Holding's clients, including Stuart, were hit. Matthew's adamant with millions spent on education, technology and training, there's no excuse, ever.
It really just comes down to the personality that some people do not care.
Do people in this area know who the culprits are? Or do you just never know?
Oh, this is where it all gets messy too. I'm not going to get involved in neighbour relations, but there definitely are people that would be considered repeat offenders.
Matthew says even if someone is prosecuted and fined, farmers aren't compensated for their losses, forcing them to take legal action against a fellow farmer, sometimes for millions.
They have no choice but to look at potentially suing their neighbours for millions of dollars, or spray operators. And I just think in 2023 that's just absolutely horrible and wrong. And the strain that will put them under, it'll go on for years. It's just, and I guess what's frustrating is I really think if people got serious about this, it could be avoided. Watermelon growers, mung beans, soybeans, they're all affected. It's just not about cotton here.
Stuart's worried frustrated farmers might take matters into their own hands.
Always going to be a worry. Because they're operating off-label, they're operating illegally, they're damaging people's property, taking away their ability to make a living.
Biosecurity Queensland is aware of 12 matters affecting cotton, which it says is not unusually high, with only 4 farmers making reports requiring investigation. In a statement, it said fines for use of agricultural chemicals contrary to approved instructions can attract fines of up to $86,000 for individuals and $430,000 for companies.
So, Wally, you think we've got 2...
While Carmen Dwyer says drift reports have been coming in thick and fast to the EPA in New South Wales, she warns cases are hard to prove.
It's a whole season's income just gone.
Yeah.
I think it's $120,000 is the maximum fine for an individual and $250,000 for a corporation for a single offence. But of course, you might have committed multiple offences.
Since Victoria introduced spraying exclusion zones in the mid-90s, drift events have fallen. So could it be on the table in other states?
That's one of the things that we're exploring, and again, you know, it's something that could make a big difference for us. All good to spray from an inversion point of view. And
Michael Murray hopes a new grain and cotton industry funded app called WAND will reduce drift events next summer. Farmers can tap into data from 100 inversion towers.
You can tell quite simply whether an inversion condition exists or not. So there's absolutely no excuse now for an operator not to know whether they're operating in an inversion condition.
So much of this could be reduced with an $8 nozzle.
Yeah, yep.
Whether you talk to growers or industry leaders, they're agreed. All the nozzle and weather warning technology in the world won't stop the cowboys.
Unless someone is actually out there, the cop on the beat, it's really hard to see how things are going to really change. And if nobody's checking, that element that don't care will probably continue to do what they're doing.
I do think the regulator needs to get a couple of runs on the board. I know how difficult that is, having done that work myself, but there has to be a run on the board somewhere to show that the teeth they've got can be used.